My name is Ambiga Sreenevasan. I am a lawyer and I like to believe a human rights activist. Well, I think I would start by saying I was very blessed in the family that I grew up in. I was lucky. I had perhaps more than many others have. I grew up with very loving parents. We were joint family, yeah? So we had uncles and cousins and all growing up in the same place. We had meals together, and I suppose because we are vegetarians, we had a lot of meals at home, which is something that is quite different today. But yeah, so I grew up in a family that was full of love and warmth, and my parents are amazing people. I mean, they set the example for all of us, and there was no difference for them between sons and daughters. I mean, actually, they had one son and two daughters. So I have two siblings, an older sister and a younger brother. So we grew up and there was no difference. My parents were very keen that all of us got a very good education. There was no difference in that scenario. And I think I didn't know anything else, right? Apart from growing up in a very loving home. And of course, they instilled all the right values in us: integrity, honesty, and basically doing your duty. I think that is something that my father was repeated often. So that's how I grew up. And then from there, from the family, I went to Convent Bukit Nanas. Same values, and that was wonderful. The nuns were strict, of course, but again emphasized values, these core values actually that we grew up with. So that's how the family was. We were culturally very, how would I put it? I think, would I describe them as conservative? Yes, to some extent, certainly. But they also had very progressive ideas on education and what our duties were. My father was always a very responsible citizen of of the country. Yeah, there was once actually that a friend of mine came to the house, and she's the one who reminded me of this, Ivy Josiah, actually, whom you will know. And she said, you know, your father was poring over the Kuala Lumpur city plan, or one of these plans, basically writing down his ideas, and he was going to submit his views, you know. So he took his role as a citizen very seriously. So we all grew up with this, you know. So that was the kind of family I came from. Yeah, so I think that's where I developing my ideas on human rights, etc. That came later, but the core values of duty, of helping others, which is something my parents did very much so in their small way and also in a big way. My father was involved in the setting up of the National Kidney Foundation because he was a urologist. So giving back to society is something we all grew up with. Okay, growing up, I mean, I was just in school, and in school we also learned, because there was an orphanage in Convent Bukit Nanas, and we learned those values as well, which is helping others. You don't realize you're imbibing this, right, when you're growing up. So it shows you how important family is, it shows you how important your school is. And so that was very much a part of my life. There was no aha moment, as it were, but it was so much a part of how we were brought up. And as I say, I thank my parents every day for the life they gave us and for the lessons they taught us, because really without them, I don't think I'd be where I am today. Well, let me put it this way. He was a founder amongst others, I have to get that accurate. So there were a few doctors who got together to do that. But my mother was always, she didn't work formally, but she helped him when he set up his clinic privately. He was in the government service for many, many years. And actually he was one of those who helped establish the Institute of Urology and Nephrology in the GH. And in fact, he came in at a time and he became a urologist at a time when that was not such a popular speciality. I remember all this because we grew up hearing him speak about all this. So that is, so mother was there, of course, always by his side. You know, they say behind every man there is a woman. She was never behind him, she was next to him. And that's what we saw. So in that sense, she was always there, always active. And I remember she would drive him, by the way. My dad was a terrible driver. And so whenever he was called to the hospital or, you know, or had to go to the hospital at night, etc., she would be there with him, driving him. So we remember those little things which then didn't seem like very much, but now you realize that they were really a team. And I think it gave a lot of security to us, actually. You know, it provided the stability that we needed at home. But yeah, he was always by his side. And you see, my dad, I remember he would deliver these rather profound lectures on medicine more often than not, and she would sit and write them out while he dictated, because his handwriting was awful, okay, as doctors' handwriting is. So she would sit there and write all of that out, and then she'll give ideas on you know, grammar and all that, of course not on the technical things. So you know, and he went very far in his career. He got the Hunterian lectureship, which was which was something that was very, very well received. So he did. He worked hard and wanted to achieve excellence in everything that he did. So those were things that we learned, you know. Yeah, it was medicine, by the way. You see, those were the days, I have to tell you. Maybe this is an Indian thing, okay? When you either had to be a doctor, or not had to be, but those were the options: doctor, lawyer, accountant. All right. We had no accountants in the family, but we had lawyers. So a lawyer, actually, my uncle, and I suppose who also inspired me. And I think what turned me to law was I was more interested in the arts. So although I did science stream after Form 3, when it came to Form 4, I said to my parents, sorry, I can't do this science thing, I'm going into the arts, because I loved reading. The one thing I did from when I was very young was read voraciously. I would sit with the book all the time. It used to irritate people because I wasn't having conversations, I was just reading, you know. And I loved that. I'm not sure that happens now, maybe it still does. Not the way it happened then, because obviously when you held the book and you read it, and there was a connection you developed with the book. So yeah, so that's how I grew up. So there wasn't a moment like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But I knew I was veering towards law, also because I was a debater. I was a school debater, and I did that a lot. So in a sense, it was almost a natural progression, you know, to law. But I never appreciated fully at that point what doors the law would open to me. That's something I came to realize later. Well, you know, there were a lot of role models in school. My teachers, not so much for law, but in building my confidence, and I think that was what led me. I think ultimately the decision to do law was my own. It was not something, as I say, my dad wanted me to be a doctor, but you know, the minute I said this is it, they were totally supportive. And I think, you know what, I think it's these TV programs as well, for goodness sakes, these law programs, right? You think it's going to be that glamorous, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. So, yeah, but you know, even in the middle of my law studies, I did have second thoughts about whether I was doing the right thing. So yeah, so that, no specific reason, but yeah. Yes, I suppose when you get to university, you mix with a lot of people, and at some point, because I did think about doing medicine much earlier on, and I had a misgiving, should I have done that? So that was there for sure. So it was just that was also an idea in my head, but yeah, nothing more than that. Okay, so I went, as I say, the values question was a big thing for me, which now when I look back, I realize that the inculcating of those values was so key to what I am. So I went from home, to a very secure home, to a school that shared those values. Then after I studied law in the UK, and there you started seeing around you societies, etc., at university, and people were very outspoken. And when you are in the law faculty, that's something you will encounter. You know, you watched moots, which is, you know, and all those things. So the freedom of speech issue I saw all around me. People were saying things that people would not dare say at home, but there they were free to do so. So that really encouraged me along that. So I think that the advocacy for human rights, etc., solidified when I came back. When I became a member of the Malaysian Bar, when I joined the firm of Screen, by the way, which had the same values. I mean, I was so lucky because they all had the same values of integrity. Screen taught me about professionalism, how you behave as a lawyer. It's not just about you don't behave like street fighters, you behave like a professional, you do your job, and fairly, and with integrity. So I learned that also. So I was very lucky. That happened all the way through until I grew up, as it were, and then discovered that out there the world is quite different. And you know, so anyway, so coming back to that, so the human rights part was when I became a member of the bar. And look, the Malaysian Bar is an amazing organization. It taught me so much. So you would go to a bar meeting and you would hear the great Karpal Singh, Karam Singh, and they are outspoken, they're fighting, all right, for the oppressed. And so much about what the bar did, right, outside your offices, what the bar stood for was human rights. It may not have called it human rights, but it was about speaking up for the oppressed, and it's in our statute, in the Legal Profession Act, that we have to speak without fear or favor. You know, in any given situation. So that was our raison d'etre anyway. So that's when I started. And then, of course, we had the tough years of the judicial crisis, and then one thing after the other, the closing down of the press. So then you saw an attack on the human rights more and more happening in Malaysia, and the bar stood up. That was when you had amazing people at the bar like Raja Aziz and Param and so on and so forth, and all stood for what was right, despite the fact it was very difficult to do so, and the government was being very tough on dissent. So that's where I picked it up. You really see it happening right before your very eyes, and you have to deal with it. So that's where I suppose I veered into it, and then I haven't looked back actually since then. Yeah. So Bersih is one of the most amazing movements I have ever seen in this country. There was a Bersih 1 already, okay? That happened in 2007, I think. So that was of course, established by civil society as well as political parties, the opposition who are now in power, the opposition parties, very successful that was. And then, of course, following that was Hindraf and a few movements. And what we saw in 2008, and I do credit these movements for that, was a change in the election outcomes. They lost their 2/3 majority, Barisan Nasional. And then that's where it progressed. So, Bersih, why did I become involved? I was president of the Malaysian Bar for 2 years, 2007, 2009. And then my dear friend Maria Chin Abdullah, together with Wong Chin Huat, came to see me. And I didn't know, I hadn't met them, I don't think I had met them before that. And they said, will you lead Bersih? It's a movement for free and fair elections. And I said, yeah, why not? I didn't know anything about elections, boring subject. And I said, yeah, sure, what's the big deal? No one can oppose free and fair elections, right? But little did I know, it was a hugely sensitive subject. And they said to me, but I said, look, I'm not interested in politics and that kind of thing. And they said, no, this is a totally civil society movement. The first Bersih 1 was with politicians, but this is going to be a totally civil society-led movement. And although those who attended were, of course, also politicians from many parties, the opposition parties, of course, including PAS, but it was led by civil society. The committee, etc., was all civil society leaders. So I said, yeah, fine, and then I had to, of course, educate myself about free and fair elections, which was exceedingly boring to start with, but clearly it was a very exciting subject for a lot of people. And then we came up with our Bersih demands, and we said, we're going to have a rally. So little did I know what that was going to entail. And I faced some of the biggest challenges in my life. And I had to respond. I had to respond on issues. I found that easy to do. I didn't have a problem with that. Because a lot of times if you base it on fact and the law, it's very hard for them to respond to you. So Bersih involved free and fair elections, involved freedom of expression, involved freedom of assembly. Every possible freedom you can talk about was a live issue at the first Bersih rally. But let me tell you, I would not have been able to do Bersih at all if it weren't for the activists. And I salute them, Maria and all of these activists who have been fighting other things like the ISA and so many other issues for years and years and years. They were hardened activists. So they basically taught me how to be an activist because I was like, hey, although I did a march for justice in when I was president of the bar, I did do that. But this was a different kettle of fish, completely different kettle of fish, because the government was coming down hard on us. So that's how Bersih happened. But it wouldn't have happened without Maria. Was truly the backbone of the operations, not me. I was the front and I answered questions, and yes, of course, I took decisions and led the march. But yeah, so that's how it happened. And what is interesting about a movement like Bersih, which is why I think it was so organic, it rose, it grew from the ground. But what it shows you is that people are ready. When the timing is right, Bersih happens, okay? Every single time, Bersih 2, Bersih 3, Bersih 4, every single time, the timing was right. Yep. People were ready. People were ready to go to the streets. They were sick to death of what was going on. We made that a condition. So we were going to follow the laws, okay, as far as peace, ensuring peace and harmony in the rally. We believe in non-violence, so we didn't brook any nonsense where that was concerned. We were very clear cut on that. we had past there, and there, you know, those who helped control, crowd control and so on. But it was the people ultimately, actually, who were out on the streets, far outnumbered the politicians or whoever you wanted to talk about. But of course, they mobilized their members. And it was such a meeting of the minds and such a meeting of all Malaysians, right? It became a Malaysian movement. So very hard for the government also to push back. And of course, the attacks that we all got were incredible, all right? I have never faced that in my life, in my life. And I was like, goodness me, what's going on, you know? But you learn to cope. You learn to cope because you have great people around you who have done it before, and they're telling you what needs to happen. And that's how you move on. Yeah, the challenge is the might of the state, throwing all that it can against you. But we had unity of purpose. We had a core message that was unshakable. It was not wishy-washy. It was very clear-cut. It was based in the law. It was based in the federal constitution. That was our strength. Our strength was the cause. The cause was bigger than all of us. The cause is what carried us through. And that's why in every movement, be clear about the cause. And what you're fighting for is the cause. So people used to attack me personally, and then they will question me at news conferences and so on. And I'll always say, it's not about me. They can say what they want about me. I don't care, but it's not about me. It's never been about me. It's about the cause. And we concentrated and focused on the cause. And so when the cause becomes the central issue, and they cannot actually challenge the cause and the basis on which you're going to the streets, it's tough for them. It becomes tough for them because what you managed to do, and I think Bersih did that, and I don't take credit for that, it's everyone, is to win the hearts and minds of the people. When you win the hearts and minds of the people, you become pretty formidable. And I tell you the thing about Bersih, and Maria has to take credit for this, it built up internationally. Bersih, global Bersih, grew. And actually everywhere you go to whichever overseas, there'll be a Bersih organization there, you know. So it grew. So whenever we had a Bersih rally, it would start in Australia first, you know, as you know, and go around the world. And then, yes, UK, everywhere, but time difference. So Australia will have theirs first, and they will put the pictures out there, and so on and so forth. And you had people just from, you'd never expected coming forward. So, and did we achieve anything? Absolutely we did. Of course we did, not only in awakening the consciousness of the people, but there were actual physical changes. We got the Peaceful Assembly Act, there was a committee set up to look into reform, and I think people started taking reform more seriously. We got the indelible ink through, we got a few things through, campaign period, few things. The Undi group, okay, the group who organized that deserve a special salute, because they were working with very little. They don't have money, a lot of this, but people were contributing. They would meet those who are flying to Malaysia at the airport, at Heathrow Airport or whichever airport in Australia, hand over these votes to them, you know, and they would bring them back here. And I mean, what an amazing, amazing movement that was. That's a separate movement in itself. Then you had the other thing that was happening, which was training of those who would be, you know, election observers or pacha, you know. Everybody took part. So it was very hard for people to cheat, actually, because you had a lot of eyes on you. So it became our elections after that, truly our elections, you know. Yes, totally, I think. No, and also all the others, Tindak Malaysia, and the people who took part. Ordinary people would go for training, pacha training, they had training, and they would go for that. So the elections became ours. this is our elections, we're not going to allow anybody to, so they had to be careful. And I think that was what was very, very special. And every election since then has been like that. People have taken ownership of the election, whereas in the old days it was, just everyone took it as a chore or whatever it is. So here was elections, which I thought was a hugely boring subject when it first came to me, becoming one of the most exciting issues of the day when it came to our elections. Okay, so it was not an easy subject to communicate to the public, actually. But I think what Bersih managed to do was to make it simple. So that's why we had the demands, very, very simple, indelible ink, stop cheating, all of that they understood. So elections became something people understood. And I think actually now we have quite a good, okay system actually. It moves, and there's very difficult to cheat at the ballot box. I mean, those days they used to have lights going out and all sorts of things. It does happen here and there, by the way, still, but less, yeah. Okay, so I understand what they're saying. They're saying we fought so hard, but look at the situation, right? But I think what we must remind ourselves is that change takes time, all right? If there's going to be 5 steps forward, 3 steps back, and so on. Because unfortunately in our political world, the same faces are there, right? We need new blood. And but it takes time. I mean, it's good to have the experience of those who have been there, but it's also good to have an introduction of, and I think that is possibly happening. So change will take time, but it doesn't mean we give up. Yes. We never give up. And I know how it feels. I feel that way sometimes. I'm not going to vote or whatever it is. You know what I mean? You do. But have we come a long way since 2009? Since 2011, first birthday was 2008. Have we come a long way? Of course we have. We've got some new legislation in with, as I say, change takes time. But what I hope to see is that more and more people will be assertive, that democracy actually grows and means something, because with all its faults, and democracy is very noisy, yeah? It's nothing peaceful about democracy, it's a noisy thing. With all its faults, democracy is still the best way forward. And I think that is, but a lot of youth are losing faith in democracy actually, because they're not getting the results that they want. Maybe we'll have to look at some tweaks to the system, maybe, yeah. It's their right, okay, at the end of the day, if they don't want to get involved, there's not much we can do about that. But I would say that when you do that, you forfeit the right to criticize, because participation is the only way that we can bring change. But participation doesn't only have to be at the elections. Bersih was in between elections. Street protests, assemblies, going to parliament, handing over memoranda, all that is also part of democracy. So there are ways in between elections where we can make a difference, where we can put our views across. Now, I think it's a little bit easier because of social media, which is something that wasn't there in a big way, earlier on. I mean, I come from the era, I was laughing to myself yesterday, I was thinking, goodness me, I think I've come from the era when television was first introduced. Before that, when I was younger, I think it was 63 if I'm not mistaken, television was first, so I was there, right, okay, when that happened, and that was huge excitement. So I come from that era, okay, where we then had telex and then faxes, which were huge. Now it's a completely different world, so I appreciate that things are different, and my way of thinking may not fit in with the thinking of the younger generation. So I'm all for having more youth involved in politics and involved in giving ideas, because it is a different world. It couldn't be more different now than it was then. So the same old rules, the same old styles cannot function as well today. So there you are. I mean, I was thinking back because you asked me about my childhood, etc. This is part of my childhood, okay? RTM 1 and 2, and then they were hero. I loved them. I loved all these people who were, announcers and newsreaders. Yes, I think we've been quite progressive. But it kept a lot of people out of trouble, I suppose, sitting in the house watching TV. You can now overdo it, but there you are sitting with Netflix. Yeah, actually, I feel I'm learning from them because I'm now having to learn about AI and all of these things. So, and they're the ones teaching us. So, and we should listen because they've born into this, okay? They've grown up with it, just as we were born into an era where I sat with a book all the time and my nose in a book all the time. Theirs is a slightly different world, they're getting information. So for me, we should learn from them. And I want to know what their views are. I always am interested in knowing what their ideas are. How do they see us? Like relics? Are they sick of hearing us? I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that question. But so, yeah, I like engaging with the youth. And I think that's something that we have to do. Because I've given my age away, right? As to television, the launch of television. Yeah, correct. So, yeah, so I think we should keep engaging because they face challenges that we never had to face. It is a tough world for them, a very tough world. You're looking at climate change, you're looking at countries who are not taking it seriously. I'm not sure Malaysia is taking it seriously enough. And we have warriors, and they're all youngsters, who are fighting. I know some people who don't want to have children because they don't know what the future ahead is going to look like for their children. So you have climate change, you have challenges of social media. It can spin out of control. That's it's a bit of a monster. Can be a monster if it's not properly channeled. You have, because of social media, the pressures that they face are instant, and there are also pressures on leaders because every minute they are accountable. In the old days, Tunku, those were the nice, gentle rolling days, gently rolling past, as it were, because anything they said would only be repeated in the press the next day, and that's only if the press publishes it. Yeah. Now, you say something, the next minute it's on social media. So you are accountable every minute of the day. Can you imagine the pressure? It's not a bad thing, but the pressure on everyone is much greater. So the youth also face that because they have their own groups. They are receiving information at an alarmingly high rate. They have to process that information, right? And they also have to compete on the social media for space. So I feel sorry for them. Bringing up children for the next generation is not going to be easy. And it's not easy. Oh no, I think, all right, here's the thing about fear. People ask me that question, was I afraid? Of course I was, I'm human. And I was facing challenges that I never faced before. And I had to think about it a lot, okay? And they're here, but then I had good friends like Maria, etc., who've done it before, and they're quite fearless. Of course you're afraid, but you overcome it. Because when the cause is more important, when what you're fighting for is more important and requires courage, you have to overcome that. Were there times in Bersih when I felt, oh my God, what am I doing? Can I run away? I did feel that, yes, but no, you can't run away. If you embark on a course like that, as I did and where I was leading it, there is no turning back. Because especially when you lead a movement like that, you keep moving forward. There is no choice in the matter. You cannot turn around, compromise, no. You know why? Because there's so many who are depending on you. So you make up your mind, you move forward. Is there fear? Of course. There always is, but you learn to overcome it. Actually, there were many. I mean, there were threats, death threats, there were people following me, there was all kinds of things I was never used to. And they were bombarding me on social media as well, very nasty messages and so on. So they try and shake you. And so that was a new experience for me, and my family were very worried. So they insisted I get a bodyguard and all of that, which I had to do, because otherwise they would be worried and I couldn't have them worried as well. So yeah, so but the funny thing is, after that, my children, one was overseas and the other one was too young, but after that would come with me to the birthday rallies, and they would joke with me and say, you're different from other mothers. Other mothers will say, oh, have you got your handbag? Did you bring your purse? You are saying, have you got your mask? Did you bring your salt? And they would laugh about it. I'd say, yeah, actually, that's a good point. So, so I think to say to the younger people, and actually I think they are quite fearless. The ones that I have seen are quite fearless, and are prepared to try new things. So the talking down to the youth will not work anymore. They actually know more than you. So you better just shut up, listen to them and engage them, Correct. And they would go to the streets and they remember wearing black, and then of course you have Muda, who started a political party. They are having problems. It's tough because they are keeping to their principles in relation to money, etc. And so it's tough, but my message to them, don't give up. This is your future, this is your world, frankly. And it's a world that the older people don't necessarily understand. So you connect with the youth, dispel that. And May 13, I know about May 13, it happened in front of my house. I lived in Kampung Baru actually at that time. And so when people frighten you about May 13, I know what it means. And people ran across the front of our house to the Menteri Besar's house wearing, whatever. So I know exactly when it started, how it started. And some people actually ran into our house for safety. And we had to run, all right, to get out of that area. So I know the fear, all right. And I was 11 years old at that time, and it was frightening. But the way they keep using the spectre of May 13th, I don't think they can do that anymore. So you know what? I think most people are pretty peace-loving on that score, all right? It's difficult to find someone who would, So I don't see it. Malaysia has changed from 1969, has changed a lot. So it's not so easy to bring about something like that. So I think politicians have stopped using May 13. Do they use it still? I don't think so, It stopped in the last, after the Bersih. Yes, but there are other issues which, confronting us, which is also the racism, and I mean, we can deal with that a bit later, but those are issues that we should be careful about. Don't let that blow out of proportion. Yeah, I think in this whole argument about secular state, and by the way, there is case authority for that we are a secular nation, but of course everyone is quietly ignoring that and moving away from it. Separation of, yes, I mean, if you look at most democracies, right, overseas, there is a separation between the religious authority and the state. The state functions purely on a secular basis. Here, of course, because it says Islam is the religion of federation, the argument is that therefore you cannot strictly say we're a secular state. I'm only going on established law. The established law so far, and there's been no change, is the federal court saying that we are, or the highest court, that we are a secular state. We have two systems. So, but there is a move to merge it. There is a move, right, to change that dynamic. And we know it's happening. I mean, you must be honest about it, right? It is happening. But we better think about it very carefully, because I don't think you can do it in a yeah, correct. That how does that affect the way we run the country? That's something that we need to really think about. You mean like Kuala Lumpur and yeah. So I don't think there is a distinction, actually. I never saw a distinction that way. No, in the way they are dealing with it, all right? That we are more secular in Kuala Lumpur than anywhere else. No. They're talking about the whole country. So where do we stand? I don't know where we're going to go. What would be really nice is if we could actually sit and have honest conversations about it. Unfortunately, it's all tied up in politics. It's all tied up in politics, and that's the danger that I see. I would love to have, I'd love it if our politicians would sit and have a really honest conversation about what this is going to mean for the administration of the country, and how are we going to handle this, etc., etc. But I think there is a move. We should be honest about it. Pressing issues, number one, corruption. I've always said it. Okay. 90% of our problems will go away if we can clean up, really clean up, not say you're going to clean up and then not clean up. Not a single administration has shown any seriousness about corruption. So until it's so embedded in our system, until we clear that up, a lot of things we can't run this country. So it eats at everything. It eats away at the foundation of everything, and that is one of the issues. One of the most important issues. The other is racism. We permit racism. And I'm not talking about positive discrimination. That's fair enough in a society where you want to bring everybody up. No issue with that. But it's the racism, all right? When recently we had university students coming out and saying, no, we don't want non-Malays in this university because it's only for Malays. And objecting when it related to medical qualification, which would have been good for the whole country. I was so horrified because it's the youth doing it. Okay, I can understand if all the from the past, if they do it, but it is present. Racism is present right now amongst the youth. What are we going to do about it? Because that can only become worse. It can't get better unless you fix it now. And you see it in schools, you see it everywhere. We're closing an eye, and I think it's a mistake because that's just going to, and what some people prefer to do is leave the country. But so many people can't. So what are we going to do? Just leave it? And I personally think we should get the youth involved. So I'm going to put racism and religious extremism as similar issues that we should be concerned about. My sadness is there's no leadership from the top, either on corruption, on racism, on extremism. There isn't one leader who comes out and says, this is for Malaysians, this country is for Malaysians. We believe in that. Well, Tunku's clarion call was, there's a place for everyone under the Malaysian sun. And I can tell you, my father's generation, and I personally think my father invested his whole life. He loved this country, as his friends did, as so many of the professionals and all those who helped build this country. They could have got jobs overseas, okay? They said no, because Tunku made them feel that they belonged. And they all wanted to work together. And that's how it was. That's how the country was built. Now everybody wants to forget all of that, okay? And they want to run a different line altogether. I'm hoping to see the youth stand up and say, no, we don't like this. We don't like this. We don't agree with this. But unfortunately, the grounding for it has already been set many years ago. How do we change that? So the fourth thing I would say is education, our education system. We really need to do something about that, because are we teaching them how to be independent, how to, are we teaching them to think, to argue, to say their piece? I'm not sure. So I think a lot of teachers would say that they're very, very worried about that. So here's the thing. That's the change, you see. That's the change. And which is why I always say, my parents have invested in this country. I'm not talking about money, yeah? I'm talking about their lives, as I have. I'm not about to give that up. I'm not about to give up on that investment. And why should anyone give up on that investment? So, but what we lack is the leadership, the political will to deal with it, because they want to be elected the next time lah. So for that, I got to say this. I may not believe it, but I got to say it, okay? It's all politics. So I'm coming around to the point of view that we should, politicians should be allowed to serve only one term. Because then they will spend that one term doing good things, because the next term they can't come back. I was in CBN till Form 6, and of course my era was all English speaking, all right? But a lot of my friends also who learned the Malay, no problems, right up to Form 6, because the system was so good. And I could compete in the university in the UK. It's not difficult. That's the kind of system we had. And we've thrown it away, actually, which is a real crying shame. So my view is that politics is killing this country, and killing many countries around the world, by the way, also. Okay, everything is about the next election, and unfortunately, because we have access to all this information, maybe that's why we're reading it, and you see that actually this is an issue all over the world. That's why the youth are giving up on the system, the voting system, the system of democracy. The youngsters are giving up because they don't see the changes that they believed we should have. You do, but their priorities, as I say, are different, you see. Their priorities are climate change and making sure the planet survives. And what's wrong with that? So I think they are disengaging because they just see no future. And so my advice or plea, actually, I don't think I'm in a position to advise them. I plead with them, engage. Don't disengage for the sake of your children, the future. And when you look at, say, Bersih or even the Walk for Justice, this is how many years ago? 15 years ago. All right, I've been fighting for 15 years, and in fact, I've been fighting before then against the judicial crisis, etc. As a lawyer and so on. I'm afraid that's how long the fight is, the rest of your lives. But there is strength in numbers. So when you give up and you disengage, you're then leaving it to someone else to fight, and that's not fair. So I don't know how to, as I say, I will not advise. I plead with them. I ask them. I cajole them. Be interested. Be engaged. Because it's for your children. You see, I know that because I've been talking to people, and I ask them, what is top on your list to the youth? Top on the list is, I don't know what kind of world I'm going to give the next generation. That's top. Climate change and all of this. And then they look at the ugly face of politics, okay, and how those, and the division in Malaysia. The other problem, of course, I keep remembering, the difference between rich and poor. It's going bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you, but I keep saying, yes, but look at those who can't fight. You've got to fight for them. And that's why I'm still engaged at this age. I would really like to be sitting on the beach somewhere and doing nothing, but it's not going to happen. Then I see how refugees here are treated. I see how migrants are treated. I see how all these things are happening, I mean, this Palestine issue and how Malaysians react in such a xenophobic manner against bringing them in. I had nothing, absolutely, I totally applaud that. It's good. But I also say to the government, we have other refugees too, here, treated badly. We have stateless children who can't even work. Why aren't you doing something about that? Fine, you're doing your act of charity here, and I agree with that. Don't forget about all those who are within our borders right now here who are suffering. But please, there are Palestinians here already, by the way, who are not treated very well, already as refugees. So when there are people suffering and you can speak up, you have to speak up. And that's what I've been taught growing up, that yours has to be a life, and I say this to my children too, a life of service. For whatever, by all means, earn and build up your careers and so on, but always give back, because there are people who don't have what you have, who never had the opportunities you didn't have. You have to fight with them, or you have to help them in some way, you know. So I think that if you appeal, as I say, don't talk down to the youth. I try not to. I hope I'm not. Don't talk down to them, because they know a lot. They have access to information that's there. So I would say, for me, the youth is our hope. They are absolutely our hope, but they need help from us. They need, whatever way we can help them, we should, because they have a tough world that they're facing. Yeah, I had to actually look it up, because I was like, I can't, no, that's a terrible thing to say. But no, because I can't name all. I mean, maybe you'll have to put it somewhere, but the latest one is the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Medal of Honor. That was a huge honor for me. Then there's the Légion d'honneur, which is the French award. The US Secretary of State Woman of Courage Award. I've had awards from the Gandhi Memorial, and yeah, from the mines. Those are I'm very proud to accept awards from Malaysian entities. So yeah, so there have been a few. I mean, I'm totally proudly Malaysian. I still tear when I hear the national anthem, okay? You can't help it. Because I remember in one of the birthday rallies, we said at sharp 2 we will sing the national anthem. And I was walking towards the platform or wherever the lorry where I was supposed to haul myself onto to speak. And I didn't get there in time, but I said it's sharp 2 and we're all going to sing the Negaraku. And I can tell you, it is the most powerful thing I've ever heard. Whenever we sing the Negaraku at the birthday rallies, it feels like Negaraku. That's what I would say. You see? Yeah. So, okay, I don't like to talk about my legacy. Okay, I think someone said, how would you like to be remembered? And I don't mind you not remembering me at all. Okay, I'm fine with that. Remember the cause. Remember the battle. That's what I think you need to do. And if at all, I am to be remembered, I would say it's for trying my best. That's what I want to be remembered for, that I tried my best, that I can say that, and that's it. That's my my answer to that. You have to try your best, no matter what you have, what's at your disposal, because don't forget, there are people who are not as advantaged as I was. I led an advantaged life, and I accept that my life was better than so many more, which is precisely why, and that's my upbringing, and I thank my family for that. That is why I endeavor to help those who are not as lucky as me, in whatever way I can. And let me also say one thing about the latest position that I have, which is as Pure Life president of the Pure Life Society. It's something I've never ever done before, because Pure Life Society is about helping disadvantaged children, not necessarily orphans, but children who come from difficult circumstances, where we provide them a home, we provide them with food, with transport to go to school, so they still go to the schools around us. And what we do is we give them a chance at life. And for me, that's one of the most meaningful things, right? I mean, I have no experience. I'm learning on the job. I don't know how good I am at it. But what it opens my eyes to, what is out there and how many people are still struggling, you know. And you talk to them about separation of powers, they don't give a damn. They really don't even know what the hell you're talking about. Independence of the judiciary, they don't know what you're talking about, you know. They don't know that it actually translates down to them. And there are many, many people in this country who can do with it. And actually our government is not bad. Really, the social services they provide children and everything, they're really, really quite experienced and not bad at all. And we have a good health system as well. So you can go there and pay 3 ringgit and they can, you know, as long as they're citizens. So those are so there are people like that who need help. There are stateless people. Statelessness, and this is where I have a quarrel with this what's currently happening with statelessness. They can't get jobs. They can't get an IC. How are they supposed to live? And it's all by accident of the birth that they had. They didn't make it happen. And yet we look at them like they're aliens. We're not prepared to help them. They can't get a job. They can't get married. They can't nothing. Okay? Nothing. They can't have children because their children will be likewise stateless. What do you want them to do? Yeah. So the lack of humanity in the way we deal with some people in this country, to me, is shocking, actually. Utterly shocking. So I mean, that's one of the things that I also want to talk about, which is some of the core issues in the way we treat people. We have no respect for life, okay? We have no respect for the dignity of every human being. Only some, okay? Then we have a lot of respect. Others, so until we start having respect for the dignity of every human being, we cannot call ourselves a civilized nation. For me, you're not. That's not, you haven't achieved that yet. So the minute you start doing that and thinking about it, because can you imagine how these people live? Can you just imagine how they're living? I don't know how they're living. So those are issues that still concern me a lot. And so I think, look, if we can't achieve that in our Malaysia, okay, when it's a land of plenty of space, good-hearted people, we can't achieve that, then what are we talking about? You know? So a lot of challenges ahead. And you know, I'm one of many who have been fighting for years. I'm talking about Maria and all these activists who've been soldiering for so long. Well, you know what? I was thinking about that. I think I may have written something down. Let me just have a look what I wrote down, because I'm not sure what. Well, one of the first things I would say is learn a language. One of the things I would say is, of course, Bahasa is a must, and mine, unfortunately, because I was taught in English, I'm still learning. Unfortunately, I didn't learn Tamil very well, which is my mother tongue. But I would say every Malaysian should be able to speak 3 languages at least, okay? English, Malay, mother tongue. If not your mother tongue, learn another language, and possibly a 4th. It can be done if you do it from when you're young. So that was the only thing I could come up with, I'm afraid, to that question. And you know, it's not, and I suppose the other thing I would say is learn to swim, which I never did, by the way, only now when I was much older. Learn music, dance, and ride a bicycle. I don't know how to ride a bicycle. Now that is, so now learning it now is a bit difficult, but learn all those basic things. And honestly, I would say, if we could, music is an amazing I learnt music, and that's one of the gifts I thank my parents for till today. Although I moaned and groaned, if your children moan and groan, please continue teaching them music. They will thank you later in life. And what I learned was Indian Carnatic music, not the piano, although I learned the piano as well and did very badly in that. I learned to play the veena, okay, which is like a sitar, right? So I learned all that at school. I was in the school choir, I was in the school debating team, I loved school. In fact, my mum said, why don't you just live in the school, because you're there so long. So music, and honestly, you have no idea, when we focus so much on the sciences here, okay, mathematics, science, then only you're a good student. You're missing out on the arts, you're missing out on literature, you're missing out on a vital part of your life which will become hugely important when you're older. And you can listen to music, you can listen to anywhere. It does so much for you, but when you learn it, you know it better, you can play an instrument, it enriches your life. So I would say to everyone, like, just know that there's more than just your school studies, there's also all of these things. No, but the creative arts don't have, you see, look at the way now let me do a shout out for my friends who are in theatre, all right, and my daughter does a bit as well. So they don't get paid. I don't even know how they live, okay, but they're so creative, so not enough attention being given to that. Actually, we should have an arts council, who's encouraging arts. I mean, look at Singapore now, everybody goes there for all the concerts. Of course, that's the other thing, we're killing off concerts left, right and centre here. So for all sorts of reasons, nobody wants to come here and perform, because we are going to have kill switches and all nonsense like that. So everybody's going to go to Singapore, or Thailand, or wherever it is. But look at what we're missing out on, and then our culture is so rich, but we are killing that off as well, here and there. Banning things all over the place, banning books. But by the way, banning books is a good idea, because your sales go up when they ban your book, okay? Everybody is getting your books one way or the other, right? So really, we got to relax a bit. I think stop it, enough. So that's a shout out for the arts and for the creative side and the richness of our culture, which I think we're slowly also killing off. But there you are. So quite a few things there. Oh, okay. I suppose coming from a family, religious, my parents were very religious, but they never, of course, forced us, but we all grew up with those beliefs. One of the things we were taught was do your duty. Do your duty. If that is your inclination, that's what you've studied, or that's, say you're a mother, whatever role you have, do your duty. That's what was drummed into us at all times. So philosophy of life would be do your duty. It would be upholding righteousness, caring about your fellow human beings, yeah, that's. I mean, I don't know whether that's all of it, but that's some of it. That's brilliant. Some of it, yeah. Brilliant. So it's caring for others. For me, that is so very vital, actually. Yeah.